Dear editor, this is the murderer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July.
I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper.
He wants his code in the afternoon edition.
Graysmith, don't you have a cartoon to finish?
The Zodiac killer has come to San Francisco.
Another letter.
School children make nice targets.
He gave himself a name.
Greek, Morse code, astrological signs. This guy's used them all.
I like killing people because man is the most dangerous animal of all.
How does one do that?
I like puzzles. I do them a lot.
Got any hard suspects?
About 90 an hour. I'm up to around 500.
You got 4 crime scenes, not a single usable print. You can't think of this case in normal police terms.
He's breaking the pattern.
Glenna said you were a cartoonist.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing at a gun range?
I just want to help.
What are you, some kind of Boy Scout?
Eagle Scout, actually. First class. Well, I've been thinking.
Oh, God save us all.
There's no evidence, Robert.
What do you mean there's no evidence? You have him seen with the ciphers, the military boot prints, the bloody knife.
All circumstantial.
Why do you need to do this?
Because nobody else will.
Dave, you made a mistake! Get away from the window.
Oh, are you okay?
No.
Why'd you do it? You put your face out there for him to see.
Hello? Who is this?
Zodiac was my job. It's not yours.
He's still out there, Dave.
Killing is his compulsion. It drives him. It's in his blood.
Jeez. What? Squirrels.
This is the Zodiac speaking.
I have a gun.
I can give you a lift to the service station.
Do you always go around helping people in the night?
I'm not the Zodiac. And if I was, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
Are you sure there's nobody else in the house?
Welcome to Dorking Out. My name is Sonia Mansfield, and not many people have basements in California. Joining me is my podcasting sister from another mister and the co-host of Dorking Out. I almost said something else. Margot D. Hello, my friend.
This is Margot speaking. The Margot speaking.
The Margot.
Excuse me.
We are dorking out about 2007's Zodiac. It's directed by David Fincher. It's based on the book by Robert Graysmith, Zodiac. And it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with me this morning? I'm so sorry, everybody. Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Edwards, Brian Cox. There's so many good people in here. John Carroll Lynch, Dermot Mulroney shows up in there. All kinds of people. I am all over the place this morning. My friend, did you see this in the theater?
Absolutely. I saw this in the theater because I was into true crime before true crime was cool. And I'm still into it, even though it's no longer cool. But I lived in the Bay Area for a while, and you're from the Bay Area. So
Yes.
There's something in the DNA there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, this case is, everyone in the Bay Area has thoughts about the Zodiac killer. I definitely saw it in the theater and thought this movie was really good. And it is one of those movies that as I rewatch it, and I have rewatched it, I rewatched it just a couple of times this week, but I've rewatched it like once a year. I feel like it's a movie I revisit. And every time I watch it, it just gets better and better for me. And I want to go deeper every time I watch it because it's just so fucking good. Spoilers, hot take, everybody. Zodiac is really, really good. If you haven't seen Zodiac or you don't know anything about the Zodiac killer, you should probably watch this movie and watch the 1 million documentaries that have come out about the Zodiac killer. But the main thing is there was a serial murderer who was just terrorizing the Bay Area during the late 60s and early 70s. And he would send letters to some of the local newspapers with these like ciphers, with these coded messages. And it is still an unsolved crime. So this movie is very interesting because it's how do you make a movie suspenseful when you know that the crime hasn't really been solved, and like when you know what's going to happen. So, which is the trick of a lot of true stories, you know.
Right. And
also, how do you tell this story, keep it engaging? It's a murder mystery with no ending, basically. So it could feel anticlimactic, but I don't think this movie feels that way at all. I think it might be a masterpiece. I don't like to throw around that word. I mean, Legally Blonde is a masterpiece, and Zodiac might be a masterpiece.
Troop Beverly Hills, masterpiece.
Masterpiece.
It does what it sets out to do.
Yes.
I get from it exactly what I expected and more. I think it's beautifully shot. I mean, the opening sequence alone is amazing. I think it's respectful for all the victims.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. The attention to detail in this movie is it doesn't take a lot of liberties. It seems to be, now again, not an expert, but it seems to be very, very accurate in its details. And I think you nailed it when you said it's very respectful of the victims. These aren't like faceless people. They give them their moment so that we get a little insight. And this movie just terrifies me. It really does.
Yeah.
It
starts
scary.
with the soundtrack, which is also excellent, and it's so beautifully used throughout the movie to set a mood. And it's hoody goody, hoody goody. Oh my god!
That song gives me the creeps now.
Same.
Yeah.
I've always liked that song, and it totally gives me the creeps now because of this movie.
Yes. So it starts on, again, so beautifully shot, on July 4th, 1969, and it's driving through Vallejo. I believe it's Vallejo. And you're just seeing like people are setting off their fireworks. It's 1969, and this, beautiful woman is driving her car, and she picks up her friend, and they go and they park in Lover's Lane, and a man we don't know it's a man, I guess. No, they know.
No, the witness says,
the witness says it's a man.
Yeah.
But it's just so creepy. The car like pulls up behind them. The car leaves. The car comes back. It's pulled up behind them. They think it's a cop coming to like give them a hard time for being parked at Lover's Lane, and this person just starts shooting into their car. It's so gruesome. Yeah. And then at this point, it kind of cuts to the San Francisco Chronicle, where it's following a letter through the mailroom. Is that right? I think so.
Yeah.
And it's a letter from the Zodiac taking credit for this crime and for one that happened a couple months earlier around Christmas. Both of them like couples on Lover's Lane. And we start meeting the people involved. So we meet Robert Graysmith. That's Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's a cartoonist for the SF Chronicle. Now, I want to take issue with the fact that maybe a cartoonist wouldn't be involved in all these high-level editorial meetings, but...
Why is he at the editorial meetings? But okay, maybe he was, for all we know.
Exactly. I'm like, maybe he was. He maybe that's just a story device to show that he's in the thick of the action, or maybe he really was. I don't know how newspapers functioned in 1969. I wasn't even born yet. I'm not that old, everybody. And we meet Robert Downey Jr., pre-Iron Man Robert Downey Jr., playing a reporter named Paul Avery, and he's the one that he starts investigating the crimes. Robert Downey Jr. is so fucking good in this movie. Everybody's good in this movie.
Right, but I'm so focused on Robert Downey Jr. every time he's on screen.
Yes.
He's so magnetic.
Yes.
And this is after he served, had drug and alcohol issues, and he was in jail for a little bit. and he was just getting his career back. So like you said, it's before Marvel.
Yes.
It was a big deal for him, and he's just excellent. He has everything about Paul Avery down. I mean, obviously we didn't know Paul Avery, but I would assume that he did tons of research. It's just a very specific performance that he's giving.
Yes.
And then the wardrobe, by the way, and the hair and everything is so good. They get it so right. Very 1969.
Yes. I'm always in the bag for Robert Downey Jr. Like,
same.
I love him. I root for him. We grew up watching Robert Downey Jr. He was like a teen actor who really had some fucked up problems. It appears that he's really done a lot of work on himself, and he has come out on the other side. I'm always in the bag for him, and I love these I love post Iron Man too, and I loved him as Iron Man. I always love Robert Downey Jr. But these it's like this one he did. I think it was Good Night and Good Luck. Like these smaller supporting roles that he was doing as he kind of worked his way back in. He's just so legit. The dude's legit. A star.
Too legit to quit.
Yes. And
as Mr. Amcy Hammer would say.
As Mr. Hammer would say.
Bay Area.
That's true.
Alive in 69, I'm sure.
True. I love him. And I love all the newspaper stuff. And,
yes,
we've talked about this before. I worked in newspapers in the 90s and early 2000s. So this movie has very much All the President's Men vibe to it, because they are investigating a story, but there's also the police procedural part. I stumbled over that word, with Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards as the cops who are trying to solve this case. And Mark Ruffalo everyone's so good. Mark Ruffalo, I just love him in this movie. I think he's so good, and I think Anthony Edwards is underappreciated.
Yeah, he has the same role in The Client. He's kind of helping out Susan Sarandon, kind of picking up. And then here, his character, he's picking up. It's Tosky, right? It's the
that's the Mark Ruffalo character. Yes, and
he was a real detective in San Francisco throughout the 60s and 70s, and was the inspiration for Dirty Harry. And for the movie Bullet, which we'll definitely cover one day, because that's one of my favorite McQueen movies. But he wore loud suits. He had big curly hair.
Yes.
He was a personality. He did a lot of – I was just doing some research, and he did a lot of TV interviews in the Bay Area back in the day. He courted publicity a bit.
Yeah, they hint at this. They don't lean into it too much, but he is someone who kind of made himself the face of the case, who the cop who was investigating it. He was on TV a lot. There's a whole thing with one of the other writers at the Chronicle that was writing Tales of the City, and he had a character
Armistead Maupin.
Yes, and they have again the stuff about Bullet and Dirty Harry, and they kind of have taken some things from him. So he clearly liked a little limelight, but his character is his partner is Anthony Edwards, and he's Inspector Bill Armstrong. I just looked up the name, and he clearly does a lot of the work as well. He's not someone who gets in front of the cameras. And I just want to sing the praises of Anthony Edwards a little bit, because Anthony Edwards was on ER for a million years playing Dr. Mark Green, I think was his name. And that character was so nice.
He was a good man.
Yes. And everyone loved that character. And I think some of that love for that character transfers to this role, because we like him and we trust him.
We also have to remember Revenge of the Nerds. And I think he's Gilbert. Is he Gilbert in Revenge of the Nerds?
Yes, he's so lovable in that movie, too. That movie, for problematic, but he's so lovable.
But that was one of my favorite comedies when I was a kid. And he was so likable there. And he's always, Also forgetting Top Gun.
Yeah,
he was huge
Goose.
in Top Gun. Yeah,
He's Goose.
R.I.P.
Yes.
So yeah, he seems like a really great person, like a nice person. He's married to Mayor Winningham now, which is like the romance everyone loves.
So delightful. I just love him so much. So, but I think his people like Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal, they are all so good in this movie. And I think someone like Anthony Edwards gets overshadowed because he's not like a big movie star. I think he's very, very good in this movie doing what he is asked to do. And he brings a lot of that good feeling you have towards him to this role because he is doing a lot of the dirty work. He's the one who's like calling all the people and trying to coordinate everybody. And Mark Ruffalo's character is the one that's getting on TV and, being like, we're working on the case. Blah, 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 blah. We're trying to crack the code. I also love the thing about the code, how they run it in the paper and like all these government agencies are trying to crack the code. And then it turns out it's this like married couple in Salinas where the husband works as a history teacher and she just likes puzzles or something. And they're able to crack the code. It's kind of makes me smile.
We should say also, I love that too, by the way. That's a little like just, yeah, sure, let's give it a go. And they solve it right away. I think we have to remember also and they can't do everything in this movie because there's so much history with the investigation and stuff. There are so many goddamn letters that they're only still just starting to solve some of them.
Yes.
Like there were so many letters sent that that's part of the reason like Zodiac was a media whore. If there was one Zodiac,
true,
which is also another thing that we'll talk about later. But yeah, that person, the killer wanted the attention.
Yes.
And loved scaring people and maybe like, you can make the argument, should the media have printed those letters? Should the media have done those things? But maybe it stopped him from killing other people. I don't know.
We honestly don't know. And
right.
It appears that they were, the media and the police back in the day were a little bit more chummy than what you have now, where it tends to be more adversarial, let's say.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like, the reporters would share their notes with the police and the police would share their notes. They were kind of all like working together.
There would be a desk at the police station.
Yes.
Like the reporter would just be there.
Yes. That was the thing.
So they could hear everything. Yeah.
And it's not like that anymore.
Probably for the best.
Or maybe it is in some areas and some areas it isn't. But it was a little bit more of a partnership back in the day. It was a boys club too, for sure, by the way.
A white boys club.
A white boys club. Yes. Thank you. So all of that is happening. The Robert Graysmith, who wrote the book that this movie is based on, the cartoonist.
That, by the way, if you can finish that book, you're a bigger person than me. Better person, smarter person, more patient person. I couldn't get 10 pages into that fucking thing.
That is so. I haven't tried to read it. Is it because he's not a writer, or
he's not a writer?
Okay.
It's also just it's very tedious. All the facts that he's trying to. There's so much to try to make sense of. Also, because this crime was committed in a time where different counties would not share information with one another.
Yeah.
So if you were killed at Lake Berryessa, which is that couple's murder terrifies me, haunts me. That whole scene haunts me.
Yes.
It gets it because it's so just like out of the. I've been to Lake Berryessa. It's lovely and it's quiet and you just, that's the last thing you expect. And he only shows the murders. I didn't realize this until I was looking at the trivia that he only shows the murders where there's a survivor. So there's like an aspect of being able to
tell that story
more as accurately as possible.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't piece that together at all.
Right.
That's really interesting.
But that's a different county that's what's in San Rafael. That's a different county than what's in Vallejo. That's a different county than San Francisco itself. So they all had their own cops. And for many, many years, they did not communicate with each other.
Correct.
So people didn't even make the connection that, which is the same thing, by the way, you can make this case for the Golden State Killer. It's the same thing.
Yep. It's exactly the same thing.
Right.
And this is still a problem, by the way. There was a whole series on Netflix with Toni Collette and shit. They were trying to solve someone who was raping women all over Colorado and all the different And this was yes, that's exactly. And that was like 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
Like this is still a thing. We definitely need to talk about the Lake Berryessa scene because this is the one that's like burned in my brain and it's fucked me up for the rest of my life because
I remember so there's this couple, in case you're not aware, by the way, we're going to spoil here, by the way. So if you probably need to watch the movie first if you haven't seen it.
Yes, please watch the movie. It's so good.
It's beautiful, but there's like a scene where there's a couple and they're hanging out in Lake Berryessa, which is this artificial lake area. People go boating there. People kind of just hang out. There's just several places that people move to Northern California because it's beautiful. And this is one of those places. Anyway, this couple is on a date-ish thing. They both work at the college. They're young. They're like 19 and 22 or something.
Yes.
They're kids. And this man just comes out of the trees, out of the forest, the trees, the bushes, and he's wearing this executioner's outfit. He's got a hood over his head.
Broad
daylight.
Absolutely terrifying.
And somebody all dressed in black, like with a hood with a thing on it. And he's slitting open the eyes just for that. And before that, she saw someone in the woods watching them.
Yeah, she's like, he's
someone's creeping me out.
Yeah, and the man is like, it's just, whatever. It's a public park or, he's taking a leak behind the tree or whatever. And then he just keeps walking towards them and he's got that hood on.
And a gun.
And there's no music in the scene either, which is one of the things that there's something about that also creeps me out because it feels so real.
And remote.
Yes.
Like there's nobody for them to yell to. I mean, it's like he stabs them. He makes them tie each other up. He stabs them. He leaves and the girl, Cece, dies.
Yes. And the man
Cecilia
lives.
And he lives. So he's able to give, and I can't imagine like surviving something like that and then being in the hospital and being like, you must have felt so vulnerable. Like this guy's going to come and get me again.
Yes.
But they rode on the car, the Zodiac rode on the car and basically is saying like, I'm responsible now for 3 murders or 2 murders at this point. And it's a terrifying scene to watch. It's important, I think, in a way, because people really need to know like what happened and how scarred these people are and how scared they would be to come forward all these years later.
So scary.
Yeah.
How much this will like fuck you up for the rest of your life. We've talked about this before in other movies or maybe on our other podcast, What a Creep, where we talk about there's the people who get murdered in these situations and then there's the people who get like there's the psychological damage. There's also just like the physical stuff. Like, how do you survive being stabbed 12 times? That shit's going to stay with you for the rest of your fucking life. It's going to fuck you up, like mentally and physically. This person's going to have health problems for the rest of their life. And the person who did it was never caught. I would be terrified.
And similar to the Long Island serial killer case that's happening in New York, the Zodiac would like look people up and call them.
Yes.
He would leave, he'd do heavy breathing calls. Like he was letting it be known that you're not going to catch him and he's going to just keep reaching out and scaring people.
And he's reading the papers and he's watching the news and it's so scary.
It really is. I also, and we don't get enough of in the movie. I mean, it's a great movie and they can't do everything. It's already like well over 2 hours. So it doesn't need to be longer.
I think it might be 3 hours long, this movie.
Yeah.
So
it is. And I still think it's, I don't get tired when I watch it. I'm like totally absorbed in it. But, they've never caught the killer. Let's just say that. But there's a shooting of a cab driver in this one. Oh, my God. I mean, the story of this is like he was only 29.
Yes.
He was killed in his cab. And then Zodiac took some of his shirt and ripped it off of him and then would just send pieces of the shirt
to people.
to people, to news media. And so now San Francisco's involved. And that's just changed. And that's when we get Mark Ruffalo and his curly hair and the trench coats with Anthony Edwards, who's dressed more, of a guy would dress a square.
Yeah, he's a total square. A total square.
Yeah. That's what my dad would wear and dress like, and he had Zodiac style glasses. So my dad would have been picked up in 2 seconds. I was telling you off the air.
The description of the Zodiac too was like crew cut glasses, like he looked like everybody. Yeah.
Anybody you could put glasses on. And then there's a bunch of suspects, and we'll talk about that too, but they show pictures of them and like, look at this old man, and now look at this sketch. Don't they look the same? Like, I don't know, maybe. It's not.
All you white guys look the same.
Yeah, they did. They had all the crew cut. They had the eyeglass frames, which are a fashion statement now.
Yeah.
They weren't that back then. I mean, people just got glasses. They just got, you try to be fashionable, but nothing like you can do today. So they were kind of square, but they were sturdy. My dad always had those ridges in his nose that dug in.
Yeah.
From his glasses because he wore them all day. Yeah.
I'm like, I probably have that as well because, oh my gosh, I would be so easily identifiable if I decided to be a mass murderer. Now that I think about it.
He's got bright hair.
She's got bright orange hair and cat's eye glasses.
And saddle shoes.
And saddle shoes. That's her.
I'll disappear in the night. I'm all in black all the time.
My toddler grandma style would really work against me.
My Wednesday Addams, I would just except for my super pasty skin. But.
So the two cops are investigating this, and at the same time, we are cutting back to the newsroom where they're getting the letters, and Robert Downey Jr. and Jake Gyllenhaal's characters are starting to form like kind of an unlikely friendship. They're both talking about the case a lot. Jake Gyllenhaal's playing Robert Graysmith, and they play him like he's a total. They tell you he's literally a Boy Scout, like he was like an Eagle Scout. Mm-hmm. He barely drinks. He doesn't smoke. Seems to be a very honest person, and he's just got a very curious mind who becomes very obsessed with catching this person. And Robert Downey Jr.'s character is just a very sarcastic, very funny, charming guy who I love the scene where they go to the bar together and Robert Downey Jr. is drinking like what you think a reporter would be drinking, fucking whiskey or whatever. And Robert Graysmith orders this blue fruity drink that it's like he calls it the Aqua Velva. And like Robert Downey Jr. is trying to talk about the case with him. And then he's like, this can no longer go unaddressed. What are you drinking? And he's like, it's an Aqua Velva. And you wouldn't make fun of it if you tried it. And then it cuts and you see that they have now each had like 4 of these drinks. They're trashed and they're talking about the case. Their friendship is handled at like just the right level, I think, before it turns into... I don't want the movie to turn into the like Robert Downey Jr. show, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't turn into a buddy cop.
Yes,
thing, but there's enough antagonism to go around. Once again, like this is the 60s. Like there's no DNA testing at the time.
Yes.
I don't know how they even solved cases. It's all been hunches, but they don't have a lot to work with. And there's a point where a couple of times where the cops just let the guy go, like completely. They went on when they would kill Paul Stein, like they went and chased a black man instead.
Yeah. And
they were told what he really looked like. And they stopped somebody else and the Zodiac got away. So there's I don't even know if that's in the movie or not, but there's a certain amount of
yeah, there is a thing where they talk to the 2 police officers who most likely saw the Zodiac, but didn't stop him or talk to him because they had received a false description, an incorrect description earlier before it was corrected. And this is also pre-internet where you could get the news whenever you wanted and read about these things. you watched the nightly news. If you
Right.
missed it, you missed it. You know, if you didn't read the paper every day, you missed it. So people were glued to their TVs and their newspapers trying to learn about this case. So there was also suspicion that, like, people at the Chronicle were writing the letters themselves to drum up subscriptions,
Yes.
and that the news media was blowing this out of proportion. Or there was at one point there was insinuation that one of the cops was writing letters to drum up interest in the case. So there was a lot of different theories about what was happening. And at one point, the Zodiac sends another letter. He threatens to kill a bunch of kids on a school bus. He's like, I'm going to pick them off one by one as they get off the school bus, which just terrifies everyone, as
Right.
it should. And so the police are now like having to like follow school buses in San Francisco. And somebody calls this lawyer played by Brian Cox.
Melvin Belli. He's like a big deal in San Francisco in the legal world.
Yeah.
He was a flamboyant character. Also loved press, loved
Yes.
media, always was on TV.
Yes.
There was also the Herb Cain column, which was
Yes.
a big deal. So he was a local columnist. Like, I think he did 5 days a week with the Herb Cain column, and he had to come up with something every day, but he
Yeah.
wrote about all these people in San Francisco. I mean, it's just its own subculture like any city is,
Yes.
but it's just I find it very interesting.
Yeah. So and of course, like, Melvin gets contacted by the Zodiac, but he's like contacting the media first before he calls the police. Like, he's just he just loves the limelight. So there's this it's pretty creepy where Melvin, the Zodiac contacts Melvin, and he wants to talk to him, but he wants to talk to him on like a KGO morning talk show. KGO is like one of our local TV stations and radio stations here in San Francisco. And he goes on TV and they ask nobody else to call in, which this wouldn't even work now. Everyone and their brother would call in anyway, because everyone's the worst.
Baba Booey!
Totally. Somebody would call in and be like, Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Because people are the worst. So they're sitting there on TV waiting for the Zodiac to call, and somebody calls. Whether or not that's the Zodiac is up for debate. But, and they try to trace the call, but technology is not what it is now. They have to keep him on for like 15 minutes or something to trace it, and it doesn't work. But Melvin comes back into play later because oh my God, this part's so terrifying too, where the caller says, like, I get these headaches and killing people makes them go away. And then he lets out this scream, this like awful fucking scream, and then says that he didn't hear it, but we all heard it. Oh, it's creepy. It's just fucking creepy. Let's see what happens next. Oh, then we get, this one is so interesting to me. There's a woman driving her car and she's got a baby. This is fucking nightmare fuel for me too. She's
Ione Sky?
Yes. She's driving a car. A man, like, somebody pulls up behind her and he's like, honk, 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 honk. And she pulls over because she thinks something's wrong. And he's like, your tire's loose on the back. I could tighten it for you. And she's like, great. You know, young mom. People are so trusting. And he clearly doesn't tighten the tires. Instead, he loosens all the lug nuts. And as she drives off, the tire falls off. Fucking nightmare. She gets in his car with her baby because he's going to take her to a station. Drives by the first station and it says, before I kill you, I'm going to throw your baby out the window. Nightmare. And like at some point she takes her baby and like jumps out of a moving car to get away. And later, like, a letter comes in and takes credit for picking her up. And this is when Paul Avery is starting to notice that there are more letters coming in, but they are coming in after stories have run in the newspaper, and they're only including details that you get from the newspaper stories.
Right,
so
right.
He is starting to suspect that they are fake. I think he maybe even wrote something insinuating that some of these letters might be fake, and he insinuated that the Zodiac was gay, which was a big deal back in the day. And then Paul Avery gets his own letter threatening him with a piece of the shirt from Paul Stein. So it is like a legit murderer, like, contacted him and threatened him. And that's when other reporters at the Chronicle start wearing buttons that says, "I'm not Avery," so that the Zodiac won't hurt them. And I think Graysmith encourages him to, like, monetize that. He's like, you could be making so much money off these buttons because all these people are wearing buttons that say, "I'm not Avery." How terrifying.
Yes.
No wonder this is like the decline of Paul Avery. Like, this clearly fucking breaks him. He probably has other problems as well. He clearly drinks too much. Like, there's a whole thing where he's trying to get people to drink with him at like 10 a.m., or 11 a.m. But once he is threatened by the Zodiac, his mental health decline. His mental health and his physical health decline.
Yeah, and he wasn't in great shape before.
No.
So which you said, like, he wasn't in great shape before anyway, but the stress of all this. And once again, like, the Zodiac would contact people at their home, or someone would contact these people at their home. You don't know if the Zodiac had an ally, if they had somebody
right
that helped them, or they just told their shit to, and that, so they had the information. We don't know. But these people, they were terrified being contacted. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Anyway, so he leaves the paper. He retires early, or he goes to another paper.
Yeah, he goes
to Sac B.
Yes, he goes to the Sacramento Bee, which everybody is shitting on, and I'm like, the Sacramento Bee is a good newspaper too. Just FYI.
I know, somebody worked there for years. It's a great newspaper.
Yeah, it's a good newspaper too. Also, in the middle of all this, Jake Gyllenhaal's character goes on a date with Chloe
Sevigny.
Yeah, thank you. And she's adorable.
Oh yeah,
she's so cute. I love their date, and how she's just very matter of fact with him, and the whole thing about she encourages him to, like, make sure that the Robert Downey Jr. character's okay, and then it turns into the date that never ends. Basically, she goes back to his house and waits with him by the phone, and they end up getting married, and they have their own kids. And as he gets more obsessed with the case, she's trying to tether him to the real world. She's like, take care of your kids, change this diaper and feed your kids, give them a bath. What was the other thing she says and she's like, please stop doing interviews because you're, like, putting a target on you.
Right. But he's so obsessed, he can't let it go.
He can't. He has to solve it. He has to know. And so it really feels like he's addicted, and he can't stop himself from thinking about the case, from working on the case. He loses his job at one point, and he's working on a book about it. And so he's researching it all the time, and it's impacting his relationship with her and his kids.
Yes, and so she leaves him.
And
because it's too much.
It's too much. She's not wrong. Like, it's really sad because she clearly really loves him, and he really loves her, but he literally can't help himself. Like, he's
toxic.
It's toxic. He's addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt sorry for her character.
I felt sorry for them.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Oh, we get a whole scene where, like, Mark Ruffalo's character goes to, like, a screening of Dirty Harry, and this just made me want to watch Dirty Harry, so I might watch that tonight. Because Dirty Harry is loosely based on the Zodiac. The killer's called Scorpio or something like that. So now I want to watch Dirty Harry, but there's a whole thing there at the North Point Theater in San Francisco, which isn't a movie theater anymore, and that makes me sad. And that's where Mark Ruffalo's character and Jake Gyllenhaal start talking, and Jake Gyllenhaal just becomes so obsessed. He keeps showing up at Mark Ruffalo's house. He's calling him all the time, asking questions about the case. And finally, we get a scene where the detectives interview Arthur Lee Allen,
which is such a great scene.
Such a great scene. And it's played by, I'm going to look up his name, John Carroll Lynch, who I think at this point I was like, hey, that's
Marge's husband.
Marge's husband from Fargo, or like Drew Carey's brother on the Drew Carey show. But he gives me the fucking creeps in this movie. He's so good at what he's doing. And the interview they do with him at his job, he works at like a refinery in Vallejo, and they notice all these things. Like he's wearing a wristwatch by a company called Zodiac that has the symbol as that's so weird. And he's wearing the same boots that were like the footprint at one of the crime scenes. And then he just starts dropping these things that he's like, hey, and those knives they found in my car with the blood are from when I killed a chicken. And they're like,
on my way home.
Yeah. And they're like, what? Like, he just starts like dropping red flags like everywhere for them. And so they really start to hone in on him as their suspect. But his handwriting does not match the Zodiac letters. And this is when the Zodiac letters become nobody's handwriting matches the letters, basically. Ever.
And I don't know if handwriting evidence nowadays, I think that's been debunked, if there is such a thing, but they didn't have anything else. Like, he was very clean. Whoever sent those letters in, they were very clean. They didn't have fingerprints on them. Yes. I think they just found like saliva on a couple of the stamps and like partials for that. So this was just, this was the only way. And I think he said it was ambidextrous, like he wrote right hand and right. And this movie is clearly saying Arthur Lee is the suspect.
Yes.
And should be, is the only one that makes sense. Now, any Zodiac person will then turn around, and I went on Reddit, and boy, they do this. They're like, oh no, but what about this? There's
so many theories, and we're going to talk about the Myth of Zodiac documentary series after we're done with this, because this has also all kinds of theories. But yeah, the movie, because this movie is based on Robert Graysmith's book, and Robert Graysmith he narrowed it down to Arthur Lee Allen is the most likely suspect. But I keep wondering, like, because they have like a partial fingerprint and they have like some DNA, I'm like, will they catch this person?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think so. And then there's, recently somebody caught the Golden State Killer, and it was because somebody participated in that 23andMe genetic testing, and that's how they were able to get it. Maybe that would work here. I don't know. It feels like it's never going to be solved.
There's just not a lot of evidence. That's the problem. There's a lot of motivation you can attribute to people, but there's not a lot of evidence.
Yes. So let's see, where did we leave off? Things just start falling apart as the case drags on and on. So, like, Anthony Edwards' character's like, I'm done. I'm moving to a different division. He doesn't want any part of it anymore. Mark Ruffalo's character is staying on the case, but they can't. He also really wants to pin it on Arthur Lee Allen, but they can't make it work because the handwriting doesn't match, which is
frustrating.
So frustrating. And
right.
Robert Graysmith is now obsessed with the case, and he is talking to everybody. And I do love this scene where, like, Robert goes to the Vallejo Police Department, and he's going through all the records, and he's reading everything, and then he can't write anything down when he's looking at the records. They don't let him have any pens or paper or anything. And then he runs like runs out of the office so he can immediately go somewhere and start writing down everything that he saw. And the cop, there's two cops, and one is James LaGrosse. And he's like, who's that? And the other cop says, that's Gray Smith. He's a cartoonist, and he thinks he's going to solve the Zodiac. And then James LaGrosse goes, good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. He thinks he's going to solve it. That's cute.
Well, they also, it's a very bizarre thing that happened in real life.
Yes.
That they don't talk about, I think, enough. I mean, there's a whole thing where Armistead Maupin, who had his Tales of the City series, that was in the Chronicle, and then they became these, I was obsessed with these books. I read like all these books. Anyway, he was getting letters in 1976 from somebody, and he thought they were weird. They were like weird fan letters.
Yes.
And then he kept them, but they thought, and then the Zodiac sends a letter to the Chronicle, and I don't remember. And so they read that, and that's when he makes the thing like, wait a second, these fan letters look just like this letter here. And they've determined that Dave Tosky wrote the fan letters, which he shouldn't have done.
Yeah, because apparently there was a character based on him in the Tales of the City, and he thought it was cool, and he wanted him to bring that character back. So he was writing like fake fan letters about that character, about himself.
Yes. And they said it looked exactly like this letter that's sent to the police saying, hey, Tosky, I got you, my eye on you, and don't you think you're big deal, and you're a city pig, blah blah blah. And they decide that he's the one that wrote all those letters, and it's just like bring up the case.
They only casually mention this, but eventually he was cleared of that. They said he didn't do that.
I don't know, I read something different. Yeah, it was a big deal. So he was taken off the case. He was put in burglary. It was a blemish on his career, and then he left the police force and did other things. But it's just an odd moment. Like, he got caught up in the publicity as well. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people did. And then we get another absolutely terrifying scene where Robert Graysmith he goes to visit this man named Bob Vaughn at his home because he wants to talk to him about like some movie posters, because the Zodiac had mentioned The Most Dangerous Game, which is this old movie about a man who hunts humans instead, because they're the most dangerous game is human, it's not an animal. So he has
Did you read that? I read that short story when I was in high school.
I have never read the short story, but I've seen the old movie.
Yeah,
the movie they're talking about.
Yeah, it's based on a short story that's in a lot of curriculum. I was kind of surprised a lot of people didn't know about it, because maybe it became after the Zodiac. Maybe that's all of a sudden they're like teaching middle school kids this story. But yeah. Anyway, go on.
So there's a whole thing with like the posters that are written, and the handwriting on the posters might be the Zodiac killer. And so he's talking to a man who worked at the newspaper, and it's Charles Fleischer.
Please.
Yeah, please, Eddie. It's the voice of Roger Rabbit. But there's nothing Roger Rabbit about this. Like, he is playing a very sinister looking person. Like, he definitely gives off a creepy vibe. And as they are talking, and Graysmith is asking him about the posters and the handwriting, he reveals that he's the one who wrote on the posters. So his handwriting is very similar to that of the Zodiac. And for some reason, Graysmith still agrees to like follow him down into his basement to look at a film canister. And as he's down, he's terrified because, again, he's a cartoonist for the Chronicle. He's not a cop. He doesn't have a gun. He doesn't really know how to defend himself clearly. And he's following someone who could be the Zodiac into his basement. It's very scary. And as he's down there, he hears somebody walking above them. And he asks Vaughn, like, is there anybody else here? And he says, no, I live by myself. But he can hear somebody walking around up there, and he's terrified that he has now walked into the basement of the Zodiac killer.
It's very Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of fear. So he runs out, up the stairs, back to the first floor, goes to the door, and then the door is locked from the inside.
Yes.
With the key.
He's so creeped out.
Ugh.
And, you know, Vaughn's just like, see you later, Grace. Like, he's so creepy. He's so creepy. But, like, the truth is, like, apparently, like, Vaughn was never really considered a credible suspect. But, like, it's shot so well. And you can see now that Grace Smith's, like, obsession has probably has gone too far. Like, he's seen the Zodiac in everything, and he's putting himself in danger to figure it out. It's very creepy.
Yes.
And then I think after that, that's when he meets with Mark Ruffalo one more time, and they really narrow it down to Arthur Allen Lee, where they really think it's him.
Right. And I remember in the Bay Area when it was in 92 or something, when they found him, like Arthur Lee Allen was being interviewed for the press and stuff. He's like, I'm not the Zodiac. I don't know who that is.
What?
And he's a real fucking creep. He was
Such
a pedophile and went to jail for like 2 years for being like a pedophile to numerous kids. It's really infuriating.
And that's when no letters were sent, by the way. No
right.
Zodiac letters.
Right. And he had a lot of rage in him. He told people he wants to kill people. That was his conversation.
Oh my God. He would just tell people, like, I want to kill people. He knew one of the first victims. He was like in love with her. And
God, that's scary as shit.
Yeah, so scary.
He like brought her gifts from Mexico or something, from Acapulco. And then we find out like one of the people, that he was stalking her. She knew him.
She was terrified of him.
Right. And so that must have been so scary.
It's so creepy. And so there's a whole thing where Grace Smith now has figured out Lee works at a Ace Hardware store or something. Mm-hmm. This is like 83. And he just goes in and there's Lee like working at the Ace Hardware. And he's like, can I help you with something? And he says no, and they just stare at each other. And the way his face changes as they're staring at each other, again, fucking creeps. The creeps. I'm terrified of him.
It's chilling.
It is, exactly. And then it cuts to like 8 years later, and one of the victims then identifies Arthur Allen Lee as the man who shot him from the first scene from the 4th of July.
Car.
Yes.
Right.
And I guess and James LaGrosse, the cop who's like, good for him, is the one showing him the mugshot. And I guess before they could talk to Arthur Allen Lee again, he died. So the case is just open. It's still just open.
Right. And it wasn't active. And then the movie came out, and then they activated the case again because all of a sudden they were getting so many tips from people. Now you have like online sleuths.
Yes.
And whole Reddit groups are all about.
I am very curious to hear about your trip down the Reddit hole.
Yes.
Because I did not do that.
There's a rabbit hole for everything, by
Correct.
the way. Yeah. I go to the And Just Like That rabbit hole sometimes. Like, wow, people watch so many things in this channel. Well, don't you remember in season 3 and the first when Charlotte was at that diner? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about?
I didn't realize that there were all kinds of conspiracy theories about it. And Just Like That.
There's a lot going on there. Trust me.
That's hilarious. I love that. Where was I going to go? Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the movie. And it, again, I watched it twice this week. I don't often watch our movies like 2 times before we talk about them because I don't want to like overdo it. But it's so fucking good. I just felt like I had to watch it one more time, and because it's beautiful to look at. Like,
it really is. The cinematography is amazing. Yeah.
And David Fincher, who I don't think is a terribly good person, from what I understand, but his movies, there's something about his fucking movies that work for me. Because I went back and I was looking at his filmography, and I'm like Aliens 3 is not my favorite Aliens, but it's very entertaining and it has a look, you know? I feel like you could tell when you're watching a David Fincher movie. They have a look.
I'm curious what you mean by he's not a good guy. I know he's like, he's tough on his actors.
I think it's more like that. I don't mean like he's a creep or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just mean like, you know, he's one of those directors that demands like a gazillion takes, and some actors love that and some hate it, and like that's all I mean.
And I think it's not like a gazillion takes, and it's like, do this one happy, now do this one sad, now do this one here. It's sort of like, no, do this again and again and again, like the same thing, and that would get very tedious. I would think. He has he did a lot of music videos before, which was a training ground for a lot of directors. Yeah. His Jamie's Got a Gun, that was his. There's a couple of them like the song good, meh, but the way it looked was completely amazing. He did Madonna videos, a couple of Madonnas. Yeah. Anyway, so what was it nominated for? Was it nominated for any Academy Awards?
Let's look, because I'm going to go into the thing here. Let me see. I did want to mention some of his other movies, and then we'll find too. Because all of these are like, you would watch any of these. These are the movies he directed. Alien 3. I'm like, again, not my favorite Alien, but it's very entertaining and it's doing a thing. 7.
Yep.
The Game.
Good movie.
Yeah. Fight Club.
Is it good? It's one of the ones but it looks great.
You know what? All of these movies have a point of view, and they're worth talking about. We could talk about any of these movies. Panic Room. It's a good one.
Good movie.
This movie I fucking hate, but other people love it. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
You know, I think we talked about it. I hated it the first time, and then I revisited it for my other show, Book versus Movie, and I completely fell in love with it. I had a complete turnaround.
Maybe I
felt
need
about it.
To revisit. Maybe my expectation was too high, but when I saw it, I actively hated it.
No, like I said, I did not like it the first time I saw it, and then I didn't watch it when it was repeated on TV constantly. But like I said, like a couple of years ago, we did it for an episode, and I was like, I'm actually really moved by this weird, strange little film that's telling 3 different stories. But
maybe I should revisit. Then he did The Social Network, which is
good
great.
Movie.
The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Good movie.
Gone Girl, which we did an episode on.
Yep. And
I think might be one of his best movies. And then he did Mank, which I didn't even bother to see, to be honest, because
that movie is tedious. And it's stuff I love, like old timey Hollywood, and how lawless it was, sort of, you know, the bacchanal spirit of it all. But it was pretentious. It was in black and white, and it was pretentious.
It wasn't for me. It looked like a big old fucking circle jerk. This movie was not nominated for any Academy Awards.
That's a shunda. Because Robert Downey Jr. deserves an Academy Award nomination for that performance. He is so good in that movie.
This movie should have been nominated for cinematography. It should have been nominated for adapted screenplay. Yes. Robert Downey Jr. should have been nominated. This movie is a good fucking movie. It was nominated for Writers Guild for Best Adapted Screenplay, but it did not win.
And let me tell you again, that book was fucking terrible for me.
So they did a really good job adapting it.
Yeah, that was a very dense piece of work, and to make a character out of that was amazing.
But this is also one of those movies that it wasn't a hit because it's just, you know, it didn't make a lot of money. It has a very long running time. It made $84 million.
And it probably costs like $50 to make or
right.
something.
And it came out in March 2007.
Not a great time.
No, and it wasn't like even top of the box office. Like it opened the same weekend as a movie called Wild Hogs with like fucking John Travolta.
Which was a huge hit.
Yes.
People make fun of it, but that movie made money.
Yeah, that movie made money. And then also 300 came out around there, and 300 made a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
But I think Zodiac was one of those movies that it just, people who saw it knew it was great, and then its esteem for this movie has grown over the years.
I'd like to see it on a big screen.
I would love to see it on a big screen again. And I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco does do stuff like that. So I should pay attention, because I would absolutely go see it at a local screen. Oh, I know we're going to talk about Myth of the Zodiac Killer. We could do that under what we're dorking out about, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear the top 10 movies of 2007?
Yeah, I do.
Because we've never done 2007 before. So these are the top 10 movies. 300.
Yep.
Which is a thing to watch. National Treasure, Book of Secrets.
I don't even know what that is.
I have never seen the National Treasure movies, but I bet.
It's a Nicolas Cage thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has its fans. The Simpsons movie, which I saw and liked.
Yeah.
But, it's fine. I Am Legend.
I like I Am Legend.
Okay, I Am Legend made me cry so hard in the theater that I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed by how hard I cried in I Am Legend.
Well, you should cry. It's very sad what happens.
It's so sad. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for that. Number 6 was Ratatouille.
I've never seen Ratatouille.
Okay, Ratatouille's really cute. This is, by the way, every Pixar movie is someone's favorite Pixar movie. And I used to be like, Ratatouille, whatever, like pretty indifferent. I've rewatched it many times since then because I have a kid now. And I'm like, this movie is adorable. It's
Everybody drink.
Everybody drink. Number 5, Transformers.
Never seen it.
I've never seen any of the Transformers movies. Have you?
No.
No, I haven't either. Number 4, Shrek the Third. Didn't see it.
No.
I like the first Shrek.
I like Shrek a lot. I even like the second one. That's with Antonio Banderas.
Oh yeah, Puss in
My
Boots.
name is Puss in Boots.
By the way,
cute.
People love the new Puss in Boots movie. Have you seen? I have not watched it.
No.
People love that movie. They said it's really, really good. And I'm like, all right, maybe I could get my kid to watch it with me.
Yeah.
Even Calvin's like, I'm not watching Puss in Boots. Okay, number 3 is Spider-Man 3. Not good.
Which Spider-Man is that?
That's Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I didn't like the Tobies as much.
I liked the first 2. I just didn't like 3.
Oh yeah, the third one was really bad.
Yeah. Number 2, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
Good movie.
I like the Harry Potter movies. And then number 1 is Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, which I don't know the difference between any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
I liked the first one very much.
Me too.
I thought it's very entertaining. And then I think it just diminishing returns with that one. It's artistically speaking.
I feel like I saw the first one and loved it. And I remember thinking Johnny Depp was so good in it. And then
he was.
And then seeing the second one and being like, I don't like this. And then didn't watch any of the other ones. And I think there's like 5 or 6 of those movies.
They make a shitload of money too.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Do you want to hear the top 10 songs for when this came out?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know some of these, so y'all are going to have to help me.
I suspect this will be the case for me too.
Number 10, Fall Out Boy. This ain't a scene. It's an arms race.
I don't know that song.
I don't know that. I'm sure if I heard it, I'd know it, but I don't. Number 9, Beyonce, Irreplaceable.
Yes. Okay. To the left. I know that one.
Gym Class Heroes. Cupid's Chokehold.
No,
this is like post-grunge stuff.
You could be making these up, and I would be like, okay, that sounds right.
Daughtry, number 7, It's Not Over.
Okay, I know who Daughtry is. He was an American Idol guy.
Number 6, Gwen Stefani versus Akon, The Sweet Escape.
Okay, I know that song. Woohoo! Woohoo! I know that one.
Number 5, I think it's pronounced Akon. Tell me if I'm wrong. Sorry. Don't Matter.
Nope, don't know it.
Don't know it either. Number 4, I remember this. Dixie Chicks, Not Ready to Make Nice.
I love that song. I still love that. I still love the Chicks.
Number 3, Nelly Furtado, Say It Right.
Okay.
It's a good song. Number 2, Runaway Love, Ludacris with Mary J. Blige.
Actually, I probably know that one if I heard it.
I know it. And this one you're going to definitely know. Number 1 song, Justin Timberlake, What Goes Around Comes Around.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't get away from the Justin Timberlake album.
Yeah, that was ubiquitous.
Yeah, you have to rock your body.
You had to.
You had to. It was the law.
You had to bring sexy back. It was missing.
Look, we needed someone to bring sexy back, and apparently it was Justin Timberlake. Yes. I disagree, but that's fine. Some people
I like him fine.
I like him fine.
Right.
I wouldn't use the word sexy to describe Justin Timberlake.
I think it's really funny that Bill Hader was on Howard Stern a while ago, and they were it was when he was leaving Saturday Night Live, so he felt okay to talk about stuff. And Howard Stern was like, well, "What are the Justins like on Saturday Night Live?" Meaning Bieber and Timberlake. And he said Bieber shows up, 30 people.
Yeah.
You know, one guy just holds his Diet Coke.
Oh my God.
Like, and he was a very bratty kid, basically, like just really spoiled and blah, blah, blah. He says Justin Timberlake shows up alone. Like he either took a cab or the subway, walks in, just walks room to room and talks to everybody and says hello and just is a good team player.
Justin Timberlake could be a cast member on SNL.
He's funny as shit.
Yeah, he's got very good
comic timing.
Yes, exactly. Great comic timing. Such a good sport on that show. Like he could join the cast. Like
he and Jimmy Fallon doing the Bee Gees, their whole like Bee Gees tribute thing. That kills me.
That's one of my sister's favorite like all-time sketches on Saturday Night Live.
She's a Saturday Night Fever fan, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
She loves it so much. What else are you dorking out about, my friend?
Well, I guess we picked this movie because Peacock added to, everyone's doing true crime documentaries now. Like this has been a trend that's not stopping. And it was Myth of the Zodiac.
Yes, it's on Hulu. No. Sorry, Peacock. Peacock.
Yeah. And it was interesting. They have like a theory and then they have a sub theory. And the big theory is, spoiler, there's one person who's saying there's no one Zodiac killer.
Yes.
There are 5 different killers who've killed people, but they're all enjoying like the publicity of the Zodiac and just sort of did imitations.
Yes.
Because every scene, he's like, I've read all the case files and I've done all the research. And so he has all these reasons why that it doesn't add up.
He thinks.
What did you think?
He thinks the Zodiac killer is a literary invention. That is his argument. I don't believe his theory, but I think it's very interesting theory. I like the idea of looking at the cases without the letters, which is basically what they're talking about in this is like, let's remove the letters from the equation. What actually connects these cases? And I think that that's very interesting. They, as we discussed, they have not caught the person. So I think they should be looking at these cases from every different angle. And I like that they're doing that in this. I don't know if I believe him that the Zodiac letters aren't real, at least those first 4. Because the first 4 reveal things about the case that only the police knew.
Right.
Where they divide it up in the documentary by like, there's like, I think 4 letters like pre-murder of the cab driver and then like 30 letters after. And the ones before the cab driver, there's stuff about the case that only cops would know. So I don't know how you can just dismiss those letters, but the stuff after Paul Stein, a lot of the details were things that were already in the paper. And I think, well, and they take it to like some linguistic experts, and they the French, then they would not be wrong. And mais oui. And you know, it was not just that the handwriting isn't necessarily the same, but it was also like the use of the words and how they are written and things like that made them think that these were written by different people. I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah, no, and that sends me back to Toschi and being accused of forging letters. So I'm like, it probably was a bunch of people forging creepy fucking letters just for the attention. I do, yeah. I don't know. There was one book that came out last year or the year before. It was Jarrett Kober, and he had really, I think, a compelling case for his person. But once again, Philip Doerr is the guy's name. But, you know, once again, you go to Reddit, you go anywhere, and you just type in Zodiac suspects. Just do that in your Google machine and see what comes up. And there's just all the... You know, there's a big story that'll come out, and like a big publication like LA Magazine will do a thing, and then all of a sudden it's a bunch of like, yeah, but blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
so it's a very infuriating case.
Yes, and there's a lot of but in this documentary. Mm-hmm. There's some very interesting stuff. The person that he wrote a book called The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and this is man named Thomas Henry Horan, and I don't agree with everything that he's saying, but again, I like that he's looking at it from all kinds of different angles. And there's stuff in the documentary that's super interesting. If you've watched the movie and then watch this, you will probably think it is very interesting because they revisit the locations. They talk about how the locations have changed. There's some random things where I was like, why did that happen? Or why didn't this happen? Or, you know, things like that. But there's so much fucking speculation in that documentary that I'm like,
I didn't know that there was the policeman or the, I guess it was like, it wasn't a policeman. It was sort of a forest ranger or a park ranger that disappeared for like 40 minutes in his schedule.
Yeah.
And that's the time when the people were killed.
Yes, and there's the whole thing about he just like bundled up the crime scene. He just like bunched up the blanket and put it in a box with like all the like he ruined the crime scene, which even then cops were like, you don't ruin the crime scene. Like,
right? I mean, how fucking stupid can you be? But yeah.
So there's all kinds of little interesting details that I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that or something. But there's also like a shit ton of speculation where I was like, well, that's a huge leap that they're making. Yeah. And a lot of like, well, if I was a person, I would do this, or, you know, and I'm like, well, you don't know what this person was thinking, and he doesn't behave like a rational human being. So how can you really put yourself in the place of the Zodiac Killer? Again, I think watching the movie and then watching the documentary, it's still a good double feature. It's still interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, they're both worthwhile. I also got really into on Max Project Greenlight, which
I watched the first episode.
Okay. What did you think?
I'm not sure they picked the right person.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not as... By the way, just go... You can spoil things for me. It's fine, because they dropped all the episodes, and I only watched one, but I felt like they picked the one person who couldn't clearly communicate with people, is the impression I got from just the first episode.
You got it.
Okay.
It's kind of like that's... You think it's going to be... They decide they're going to use a woman. They're going to pick a woman because there's never been a woman picked for director.
I love that they just set it out right. Like, this is what we're doing.
Because this has never happened before, so these are going to be the rules this time. It has to be somebody who identifies as female, and they said they had thousands of people send in their work, and they had brought it down to 10. Mm-hmm. And I did like the clip very much.
Yeah.
That she presented to them.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know how long these clips are, but all of them, and it's Kumail
Yeah.
He's Ninjaji, and then we have Issa Rae, and then we have the director for Love and Basketball.
Yeah, and The Woman King is the most recent.
And The Woman King, right. And they're her mentors, but you don't know this yet, but they all, like, I guess it's in the second episode, they're like, okay, you're going to make your movie in 2 months. By the way, I'm going to be in London for Barbie. He's going to make this Hulu show, and she's going to be editing, The Woman King.
Yeah, they weren't really there to mentor her.
No. And so I think that's part of the problem. And I don't know if that was part of, like, let's pick the person that had the least amount to say.
Yeah, it was very, because again, like, we didn't see all the clips, so we see parts of some of the clips, but the stuff they showed of hers is really good. And maybe, she's very good at communicating her stuff visually, and telling a story. But when you sit her down and talk to her and ask her about things, she cannot clearly communicate why she made the choices she made. Everyone else seemed to have a very strong point of view.
Right.
Well, let me rephrase that. Not everyone, but the people they narrowed it down to seemed to have a very strong point of view. And this person had a strong submission, but wasn't able to, like, verbally tell people. And so much of filmmaking is more than just yelling action and cut. Like, you have to communicate with people because it takes a shit ton of people to make a movie.
Right.
And if you can't lead, if you can't communicate, what are you doing?
That's kind of in essence.
Okay, well, I'm in for a treat then when I get into the next episodes.
It's so interesting, the meta part of it being like there's this documentary about making a movie. And that the crews, how do the crews get along? Spoiler, they don't.
Yeah.
And
they usually don't.
They usually don't, and I get why. I mean, an actor doesn't want them in their sight lines. Like, I don't need a film crew filming a camera that's then filming me. That's a lot for me. So anyway, but she had great actors that they picked, and I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm a little scared to see the movie because the movies don't tend to really be very good.
Yeah.
They're just,
correct.
They're just, you wind up with the show like you really like the person that's leading, and that you would go attached to them.
Yeah.
Or except for the one guy that was the last time they did it.
Oh yeah, he didn't come across very well.
No, not at all. But there's just so much work that goes into it, and I just thought that was interesting. So those are the things I'm dorking out about.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. It does show, like, all the work that goes into these movies, and again, it's not just pointing a camera and having actors say lines. There's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes to make the movies that we love, and that part interests me.
I think with I'm sorry, I'm going to say one more thing, especially with the strike that's happening.
Yes.
The WGA, a lot of the reason they picked this person is because she's a writer director, and the script needs a lot of work, and so they're constantly, like, giving notes about what to do with the script, and she says things like, okay, I got to think about that, I'm not quite sure, I got to think on that, and I think they thought they were getting a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Where they probably should just have hired a writer to help her.
Yeah, that makes sense. They put a lot on these. There's a lot of constraints on these Project Greenlight directors. They give them very tight budgets and very tight timelines. And they are first-time directors, so it's very hard what they're asking them to do. It's not surprising that they very often don't produce a movie that people actually want to see.
Because I'm sure there are a lot of nervous breakdowns that happen on a movie set, and that's just part of the process.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know that part. Yeah. It takes the mystery away from the movie.
That's true.
So that's it. That's all.
That's interesting. I wonder if they should release the movies first, and then we watch the movie, and then we get to watch the show.
That probably would be better.
I wonder if that would. I'm kind of. I mean, I could do that. I could watch the movie now and then go back and watch the show. Maybe I should do that.
Maybe you should do that.
Maybe I'm going to do that and then see if that's a different experience. The other show I wanted to point out is Welcome to Lake Crappy. With
Luann,
fantastic. With Luann and Sonia from Real Housewives of New York. The show is adorable. Everybody drink. It is like The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie mixed with Schitt's Creek. Like, this show is really sweet. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, and I was like, this show's actually really sweet.
It's fun. I'm going to definitely keep checking in with that one. But yeah, there's the second episode where they take over a trailer, like a little go-kart, like electric cart kind of thing.
Yes.
I was like, that's something Sonia and I would do, like immediately. Like,
I'm looking up what the town is, because it's not actually Lake Crappy. That's the name of Benton. They send Luann and Sonia to this small town named Benton that has been hit hard by COVID, and they're gonna like put on a variety show to like raise some money for the town. And they're staying there for what, like a week or 2, I guess?
No, it was like 6 weeks.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Why Luann like brings case after case to this cheap motel that they're staying at.
It's so funny. They just just so many fucking trunks of clothes, and like they put them in this hotel that is rustic, to say the least.
And you don't have to watch Real Housewives of New York, by the way, to get this. Like, you just like, because these are 2 fun characters when they're on vacation. These are 2 people like always have fun.
Yes.
And that's what's part of it. Like, they just they go with the experience, and it's fun.
Yes.
And there's the catfish scene where she.
Oh my God, I laughed so hard.
Oh my God, yeah.
They picked the 2 right women for this, because these are the 2 that I haven't watched Real Housewives as long as Margot, but when I've watched it, these 2, when they send the housewives on vacation, these are the 2 who are always the best sports. They are willing to try the things, and they're very silly people. They just say ridiculous things, and they're just down. They're down to try. And so they have them go like hand fishing, where you have to like catch fish. It's so fucking gross.
And she catches it right away.
She does. Like, because Luann, by the way, is like in awesome shape. Like, she's a very athletic person. And Sonia is the opposite of that. Like, Sonia is very like soft and bougie, and like, but she's such a good sport. They're so fun. I really enjoy it. I'm definitely going to keep watching.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my only other new show. My friend John has been begging me for years to watch Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Did you ever watch that on CW?
No.
Okay, well, I started it, and now I'm kicking myself for not starting it sooner. Because again, John is right and I am wrong, and the show is so good. It's like a comedy musical that was on the CW with Rachel Bloom as like a woman who moves from New York to California following her like high school boyfriend that has since moved on with his life, and she's a very weird person, and there's a lot of musical numbers. It's very funny, and I'm enjoying it. John is also the one who made me watch Schitt's Creek, and obviously, I'm not a monster. I love Schitt's Creek. So again, John was right.
John was right. That's a category.
John was right. He also wants me to watch Jane the Virgin, which I have never watched.
I've never watched it either.
And he insists that I will love it. So when I finish Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I will start Jane the Virgin. I need one of those like good 45-minute shows.
Yes, we all need that.
Yes, and this is scratching that itch, so it's really good. So I'm really glad that we finally talked about Zodiac. I know it's been on our list for a long time, and it felt daunting because it's such a fucking masterpiece. But I think we did a good job, if I don't say so myself.
I think we did an excellent job.
Yeah,
and this is Margot speaking.
My friend, tell us where people can find you on the internet.
You can find me on Twitter as long as that exists. I don't know when you're listening to this in the future. At Brooklyn Margot, on Threads and Instagram, and my site, it's Brooklyn Fit Chick. And my TikTok, where I've put some clips of Zodiac on there, is at my name, Margot Donahue.
And you can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, wherever you get your social media, maybe you can find me there. I don't know why I feel the need to be on every platform, but you can find me wherever. You can find Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. You could email us at dorkingoutshow@gmail.com. We take requests. So if you have a movie, we recently got a request for North Dallas 40. By the way.
Right.
So maybe we'll save that for football season.
I'm totally banned. Yeah.
Yeah. This person was like, please. He's all, you know your listeners, but please. So North Dallas 40 is on the list. If you want to give us a review, preferably a good one, please, that would be lovely. It helps us find our people. And you can also find Dorking Out Show on Twitter, as long as that's a thing, and Threads, and Facebook, and Instagram, where I am really going to try to make Dorking Out a little bit more active. So please follow us on all the things. Thank you, my friend, for going into this dark basement with me.